In this part, we will take a look at the fourth stanza of the Atma Shatkam composed by the great Guru Adi Shankara when he was a boy of 8. The first two verses are Na punyam na papam na saukyam na dukkam na mantro na tirtham na veda na yajña. Adi Shankara says, Na punyam na papam na saukyam na dukkam. Neither am I bound by merits nor by sins, neither by happiness nor by sorrow. Of course, Adi Shankara here is talking about the Atma. Merits, sins, happiness and sorrow do not apply to the Atma. Here a key point should be understood. Virtue and vice are very much applicable to the bound jiva. This is directly linked to the concept of karma. Kind acts, good acts, acts done with the self in mind, results in accruing punyam, merit. This yields good karma, which is called sakarma. This is typically done when one exercises dhamma, dhana and daya, self-control, charity and kindness. All things like ahimsa, asteya, not hurting others, not stealing come into this. So any good deed performed with the ego of the I, thinking I am the doer of this action, that yields karma, but it yields good karma, sakarma, that bears its fruits in the next cycles of birth. Bad actions, actions that go against dharma, actions that harm others, yields sin, demerit, papam. This resulting bad karma is called vikarma and it also bears its fruits in the next cycles of birth. Actions done without the self in mind, without the I, do not accrue any karma and they alone move one towards liberation. This is called akarma, meaning no karma. So if you see, realized individuals always do the actions without the self in mind. So the concepts of punyam and papam are just applicable to the jiva as it navigates in the material world. Merits and sins are just applicable to the bound jiva. So next, Adi Shankara says, Na saukyam na dukkam, neither joy nor sorrow. So this is a little bit easier to understand. As we saw earlier, feelings are the product of the mind, the antakarana, when it interprets the inputs given to it by the sense organs. So joy and sorrow are not applicable to the Atma, merely they are a product of the mind. And the Atma is identical to the Brahman, eternal and unchanging. Adi Shankara then goes on to say, Na mantro na tirtham na veda na yajña. I do not need mantras, sacred chants, tirthas, holy places, Vedas, the sacred texts, or yajñas, ritual offerings. So Adi Shankara is not dismissing the value of mantra, tirtha, veda and yajña. For the bound jiva, mantra, tirtha, veda and yajña are valuable aspects that allow the jiva to experience life and move towards liberation. In fact, take mantras for an instance. Adi Shankara himself composed devotional hymns to all aspects of the divine. One of his best works is the Saundarya Lahiri, a composition dedicated to the Divine Mother. It scales the heights of bhakti. In one verse, he says, Tvadhanya panibhyam abhayavarado devatagana Tvameka naiva asi prakatitavara abhiti abhinaya Bhayat tratum dhatum palamapicha vancha samadikam Sharanye lokanam tavahi charanaveva nipunau. He extols the Divine Mother as the ultimate refuge of all the beings in the universe. He says all gods and goddesses use two hands, one to dispel fears and one to grant boons by means of the two mudras, the Abhaya Mudra and the Varada Mudra. He praises the Divine Mother, you do not use your hands for this. Your feet alone are good for offering refuge to the entire world. And he wrote such compositions for all deities. In his Subramanya Bhujangam, Adi Shankara praises Lord Muruga with this verse, Mayuradi Rudam Mahabhakya Gudam Manohari Deham Mahachitta Geham Mahideva Devam Mahadeva Bhavam Mahadeva Bhalam Bhaje Lokapalam. Obeisance to Sri Subramanya, whose form mounted on a peacock represents the secret of the Mahabhakyas, whose beautiful body resides within the heart of the great consciousness, who is the great god of the Devas and the embodiment of what the great Vedas convey. I worship that son of Mahadeva, who is the protector of the world. In fact, in his most famous composition, the Bhaja Govindam, he says, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudamate. First verse. Worship Govinda, O ignorant mind. Just as a side note, Often Adi Shankara's verses are couched in wisdom. Just take the above stanza for example. As we have already seen in another part, the word go means ray of light or knowledge, and Vinda means to get, to gain. Govinda is one of the names of Mahavishnu, he who gives knowledge. And bhaja, apart from worship, also means to bestow and distribute. So Adi Shankara himself wrote various devotional hymns praising all the deities. In terms of tirtha, temples and sacred spots, Adi Shankara himself established and revived many ancient temples. Most of the famous temples, including the ones like Kedarnath, Badrinath, Rameshwaram, Dwaraka, Jagannath, all of them were revived by Adi Shankara. In fact, it would be pretty tough to find an ancient temple in India that Adi Shankara had not touched in some form or the other. Then he states, Na Veda, na yajña. Again, the sacred texts and the yajñas are for the bound jiva to realize its true nature. Adi Shankara is not rejecting any of these, but he cautions people against getting lost in just reading the scriptures and failing to move towards understanding the true nature of reality. In fact, Adi Shankara in his Viveka Chudamani says, Shabdajalam Maharanyam Chitta Brahmana Karanam. The scriptures, consisting of the web of words, are a dense forest which causes the mind to wander. And then he says, Ajnana Sarpadashtasya Brahmajnana Aushadam Vina. For one bitten by the serpent of ignorance, the only cure is the knowledge of the Brahman. One thing that we all have to understand here is that Adi Shankara was both a theoretician and a practitioner. His time was such that he had to expound the theories in detail. However, he emphasized the practice of Shravana, Manana and Nididhyasana as the means to liberation. Shravana is the first step, hearing the truths by reading or listening to the sacred texts. This is a very initial step. The second step, Manana, is reflection, examination of this truth. This is very important. In fact, once you read the scriptures, you have to reflect on the scriptures, and this could give rise to many questions. And disciples could question their gurus based on their thoughts. And many a times, they could even disagree. In fact, Jaimini, the proponent of the Mimamsa Darshana, was a disciple of sage Badarayana who wrote the Brahma Sutras. Jaimini emphasized the rituals, whereas Badarayana emphasized the jnana, the knowledge. This is how various darshana systems emerged. The final step is Nididhyasana, continuous, deep, meditative contemplation on the truths like the Mahavakyas. This alone would take a person towards realization. As Adi Shankara says, while scriptures have their place, one must also take care not to get lost in merely reading them. What is the point of learning all these scriptures if one's mind is still bogged down by the material? One is still ignorant. The idea of Adi Shankara is to put this in practice. And of course, all of this is applicable only to the bound jiva. The Atma, again, is beyond all this and identical to the Brahman. So Adi Shankara says, Na mantro, na tirtham, na veda, na yajña. Now here, we will also take a look at the last word, yajña. Yajña outwardly means ritual. And sure, some of the texts prescribe rituals for general well-being. In fact, the entire Mimamsa Darshana deals with that. But there is a deeper meaning to this word. The Chandogya Upanishad states that every event in the universe is connected. As everything is a part of the Brahman, our thoughts and actions influence the entire cosmos. Every thought and action of ours, says the Upanishads, produces a certain reaction in the universe. The actions of all beings cause subtle forces that in fact contribute to the manifestation of the natural phenomena. So it states that this world experience that the jiva undergoes is the yajña, the sacrifice into which our thoughts and actions are the offerings. Again, all this is applicable only to the bound jiva as it comes into the existence and not the Atman. So this is the reason Adi Shankara says, Na mantro, na tirtham, na veda, na yajña. In the next part, we will take a look at a verse of the Atma Shatkam that contains the highest wisdom. As always, the known is a drop and the unknown an ocean. Peace.